Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another very special, as always, episode of the Hyper Conscious Podcast. We have a very special guest today. She's the creator of Dreamcatcher's District. Minutes if I could talk. She's a podcaster, a speaker, and a coach, and she is a beautiful, energetic being, as I promised I would introduce you that way. We are sitting down with Karen Christensen. How are you doing on this beautiful day?
I will tell you, as I told you when I first saw you, I am so grateful to be here, and I really, really appreciate, and I want your listeners to know this about the two of you. You have been so gracious and so generous and so persistent with having me here with you, and we're finally all together. And I appreciate that so much, and it speaks so highly of how much you respect your show, your audience, and your guests. And I'm just friggin' psyched.
Thank you so much for the kind words. It's our goal to make sure, and you just asked us this, what are you looking to get? We want to make sure that we add value to the listeners. And when Alan says, hey, I met somebody, I don't remember if we met.
I don't think we did.
I don't think we did. But when Alan says like this, I have this young lady who is amazing and she will add so much value to the listeners. That's our ultimate goal. So can you, for the listeners who don't know you, can you tell us a little bit about who you are today? And then we'll dive maybe a little bit into your past. You know, we'll see where we go from there.
We'll dance around. Ooh, that's such a juicy question. Who I am today. Well, first of all, I think I, like you, like everyone listening, like all of us, is always figuring that out, is always peeling back another layer. And I think we have been gifted if we choose to look at it that way. And it's really hard sometimes. An incredible, albeit brutal, opportunity right now, given the state of things in the world, everything that's going on politically and socially and racially and environmentally and with COVID. We're all in this sort of forced reset and regroup. And so I know that I, again, maybe like you, maybe like those listening, are redefining and reclaiming a bit of that and looking at, well, first and foremost, where can we just all have some humanity with each other? Where can we all just be more of ourselves and learning to love, honor, and accept even the foibles that we have and even the mess ups that we have. And that feels really, really true for me, more than the identities that I could hook into of, well, I do this and I've made that and I've experienced this. You know, those things are kind of these externalized milestones or these externalized accolades or awards. And I think, you know, they're important, but they're not really who we are. I think who we are at our core is just messy, sloppy humans sometimes that are kind of bumbling and fumbling forward. And so I think that can also be okay. So I feel a bit of that sometimes in this season. And I don't know if anyone else listening feels a bit of that sometimes. And I do want to say this too. I think it's really important, particularly people who are speakers, who are podcasters, who have platforms, who are coaches, teachers, mentors, show that messy middle, show that pivot, show that feeling of like, I don't know. You know, there's actually real power and real leadership in saying, wow, we're really all in the woods together now. We're really all figuring this thing out together now. So I guess that's my long, short answer on that one.
I actually did an Instagram video yesterday about like how overwhelmed I was with, yesterday was just one of those days where I sat on the couch all day. I did a little bit of work. I literally got ready for the gym and didn't go. Like it was one of those days where I was just like, I was cooked, but enough about me. So for the first part of your life, you actually grew up and lived not far from us. You were in,
I know, how funny,
right? Small world. What took you across the country? Like from living in a small town in New Hampshire to traveling across the country to chase your dreams. What catalyzed that for you?
I love this question. Before I answer that question, can I just marinate for a second on what you shared? Because again, I think this is super, super important. One of the things that I'm so convicted about right now and so passionate and committed to right now is helping people who, like you, Alan, like me, like those listening, who are ambitious, who are achievers, who are high performers, but because of the times that we're in, or because of something in their own life that feels out of alignment, they're having more of those days like what you described, which many of us are. So I just wanted to hang there for a second. It's not unheard of, and it's not unusual, and there's nothing wrong with having those days where you're like, I am cooked, like you said, I'm burned out. So we can go back to that, but I just wanted to acknowledge that you can be a high performer and you can have a day where you're like, I am spent, right? In terms of what got me to come 3,000 miles at 19, it's funny. I want to tell the story that like, oh yeah, there was this big master plan and I knew I was going to go and do this thing. It wasn't quite that. It was more, if I'm to be radically honest, I went to University of New Hampshire in Portsmouth, which is beautiful. And 40-year-old me is like, oh my God, that was an amazing opportunity. Why didn't I relish it? But to be frank, at the time I went kicking and screaming. Like I did not want to be there. And I didn't really know what I wanted, but I knew I didn't want that. And my eldest brother, who's 12 years older, who, by the way, shout out to David Christensen. He has been a huge lifeline and a huge mentor to me, particularly this past year. He was in LA and he was working in the music industry. And he needed like a summer intern. And I was like, I'll be your summer intern. I'll come. And I remember at 19 years old, for the first time ever, someone asked me, and it was him, what would you do if you couldn't fail? And no one had ever sort of posed that as an option. And I was like, oh, well, I would act. And it was like this secret. It was like this like, ooh, can I say it? Can I do it? And he was like, well, let's do that thing. Let's make that happen. And I remember it was probably within 60 days. I had a top agent, I had a top manager, and I was auditioning for like major things. Now, was I ready? Absolutely not. Did I have some raw talent? Yeah. Did I get in the rooms and sometimes do well and sometimes totally mess up? 100%. But it was more about someone, in this case, my brother, just volleyed this idea to me that had never really been presented before, that you could have a life bigger than what you had ever seen for yourself before. And that secret hunch that we sometimes have, and I've had it many times in my adult life, it's there for a reason. And sometimes it can look like jealousy. You see somebody and you're like, oh, I want that thing. I want to do that thing. And if you don't act on it quickly, it can turn into jealousy and frustration. Or if you act on it quickly, it can be enthusiasm and excitement. And it's like a signpost. And so I feel so grateful because I got to have some really fun experiences and some challenging experiences. The entertainment industry is no joke. It's very marginalizing, very sexualizing, very trivializing. And this was long before the Me Too movement. So I certainly endured my fair share of traumas and trials, which I would not wish on anyone. And also, I learned so much about relationship building, about marketing, about the discipline of showing up even when you don't feel ready, rejection, failure, the fact that sometimes things just are not ever going to happen because you're not ever going to be the right fit. There's just a culture fit that's not the right fit, right? So I learned so much. So I feel so grateful. But it wasn't so much that I had this plan. I wish that I could say I was one of those like 16-year-old prodigies that was like, I'm on a mission and I'm going to do this thing. That was not it. And that's not really been my life, honestly, in the last 20 years. But I will say, and whoever might be listening who resonates with this, I have had the experience of, if I have a big, bold dream and idea, thankfully had the experience of knowing how to turn that into a real world reality. And I've done that multiple times, and I've pivoted multiple times. And I've had quick success multiple times. Now, the underbelly of that and the challenge that I've been faced with, and maybe people who are listening have been faced with, is sometimes when things come really quickly, you don't have to learn grit. You don't really have to learn how to dig in on that second mile. when nobody's watching, and you've lost the excitement of, race day and the gun goes off and you can't see the finish line. And people suddenly are passing you because they just have more determination. They have more competition within themselves. They have more hustle. And so what maybe for me, and maybe those listening who can relate to this, I did have a lot of experiences where I went after something, I very quickly had success. I very easily was able to take an idea and make it a real world reality. But then the stamina to sustain it was where I sometimes struggled, right? And I really had to learn, and I'm still learning all the time, how to flex those grit muscles and those discipline muscles when you don't want to, when nobody's watching, when it's not fun anymore, when there's no payoff, when you're doubting yourself, when everyone around, when you're doubting yourself, when everyone around you is suspicious or criticizing what you're doing, right? So yeah, it's been an interesting journey that did start with small town girl, 10,000 people in New Hampshire, coming 3,000 miles to big city LA, and not really knowing exactly why, but then finding this amazing opportunity, which led to so many other amazing opportunities. So that is true.
So I too drove across the country around that age. I was 22, I believe, or 21. And I drove, I went through Columbus, Ohio, Denver, Colorado was beautiful, stopped in Vegas, obviously. And I lived in LA for a time, like 3 or so months. And I had these aspirations to be in show business, the actual business side, talent management type of stuff. And I went with a friend who wanted to be an actor. And what's interesting is I've spent some time in LA, like quite a bit actually. In all of my travels, LA is like a frequent flyer for me. And I think that one of the questions I want to ask you, because I listened to an episode where you talked about the 19-year-old girl heading out to LA from a small town in New Hampshire of 10,000 people. Let's talk about perception versus reality. Let's talk about what you perceived back then of LA and show business and production and music and all that stuff to be versus what it actually is from this new, 19 years later, 20 years later perspective that you now have, having lived it in multiple facets.
How much do I love this question? And how much time do you have?
I've been looking to ask you this question for a hot minute.
Oh my gosh. How did I not know this part of your story? Oh, there's so many rabbit holes we could go down. All right. The question was my perception and then the reality. And then looking back, what do I take from that maybe? Well, I will tell you this. I had lived in the same small town of 10,000 people since I was 2 years old.
Right.
I had never had to make friends, really, just to be totally frank about it. I had this assumption, I don't know if it was a perception, but it was an assumption that I was going to get off my little plane and there was going to be like an entourage of people welcoming me to Los Angeles with like signs, right?
It looks a bit different than that, doesn't it?
Yes, and it was going to be like, and here is your new life. And that did not happen. I stayed with my brother for free for I think the first 3 or 4 months in Venice Beach. And at that time, Venice Beach was very, very different than it is now. And I remember just being so lonely, just crazy, crazy lonely, because it sort of hit me like, oh, so I'm going to do this thing. He and I have agreed, yes, we're going to do this thing. So I sort of like stuck the flag, in the ground and told my parents this is what I'm doing, and, left school and right. And then the thing actually became the thing and I was alone. And I remember that feeling of, ooh, what was I thinking? Right? This is not at all what I thought. And I think it's really important to mention that because when you make a decision, if you feel like you have outgrown some part of your life, right? So even back at 19, I recognized to some degree, I don't belong here at this school doing this thing, at least not right now. I knew on some level I had outgrown that, right? And then I made this quick decision, this quick pivot. And I had all of these assumptions of how that would go. And then I landed, and just like what you're talking about, I was like, oh, that perception just got annihilated, right?
And you made the decision on that perception. That's
yes.
a fascinating thing, right? So
Yes.
I didn't interrupt you, but this is such a powerful conversation for me because it's taken me back. You walk outside my apartment, on the upper left is the Hollywood sign. If I take a left, I'm on Sunset Boulevard and I walk up 2 blocks. If I take a right, it's very dangerous. Yes. And it's just an interesting area to live in. And again, I was a young kid looking back. It's like I had no idea what I was getting myself into. But I also think it helped me grow tremendously. So keep going deeper on this, because I think perception versus reality is what Kevin and I talk about a lot. Oh, yeah. Your character is what you go home with and sleep with at night, and that's what's going to matter. In the marketplace, unfortunately, the world is going to see you for your work, right? I love Eminem, but I don't love him because he's a good father. I love him because he's good at rap, right? And that doesn't mean he's not a good father. But character...
The best at rap.
Right, the best, exactly.
Get your words right.
You know, we know his name because he's good at rap, not because he's a good person. And I'm not saying he's not, but that's just an example that I use because the marketplace will see you for your work. Yes. The world and your intimate relationships and your friendships and your family will see you for who you really are, and you'll see yourself for who you really are. So from that lens, can you go deep into what LA has done for you, to you, with you? Because I know that was probably a massive transformational, caterpillar into butterfly, painful experience for you.
I have chills because I'm feeling so much of what you're speaking when you talk about character. So first there was this reality that kind of smacked me in the face of like, oh, there's no fanfare, there's no parade, there's like no one's here. I don't have a welcoming committee. I'm on my own. What the heck did I just do? That was number one, right? But then I did what was required. I got into amazing acting classes, working with the best of the best teachers. Like I said, I just happened to be very lucky and get top agents and managers. And I happened to get my SAG card and auditioning and booking small things. And so that created momentum. And so all of those things were really positive and they kind of buoyed me, right? And it just shows us again, the importance, I can't stress this enough to those of you listening, community, mentorship, coaches, I mean, they are game changing, right? Had I just landed and been by myself and not surrounded myself in those environments, it wouldn't have built any momentum, right? So that's the first part. The second part about character, as I was saying, and as we all have seen since the Me Too movement, it's no secret. The industry, and particularly back in '99, when I was in it, had a lot of lack of character. And at 19 and being a small town girl, I was in a lot of environments that were not of character and not yet having the skill set to know how to navigate them, right? And it was, for me, a forced transition out of acting in some ways, but a brutal but beautiful blessing. I was living with my roommate at the time, who was my best friend, and she was not in the industry. She was a therapist, and I would, be going to her for support, and we would sort of be dealing with, how crazy the industry was. And she was a real gift to me in my life, and like a big sister. And then suddenly she was diagnosed with cancer, and within 18 months she died. And I remember, at this point, I'm 23. I remember my whole world just stopping. Nothing made sense, right? And before she died, she was in hospice. But I was so young, I didn't really know. I didn't really get what that meant. And I remember I was on a film set in Vegas, this terrible, awful B horror movie, and feeling how incongruent my life was, feeling like my friend is dying and I'm in like some dumb B horror movie playing some like quirky, sexy, stupid girl. Like, what am I doing? And again, very quickly, within a few months, I left my agent, I left my manager, I left the industry because the character was out of alignment, right? I knew this is not who I am. right? And that goes back to when I think about us talking about where I've sometimes struggled, and anyone listening, if you feel like you sometimes struggle, the grit and the discipline and the daily grind, and those of us who have kind of quick success, but then struggle to like do that messy middle part. Another part of that, and it's not to let ourselves off the hook, but it is something to check in with yourself. Sometimes we can't do the discipline, we can't do the grit because we just have to flex that muscle. That is true, right? Other times it's because we're out of alignment. It's because it's not congruent any longer with who we know ourselves to be, what we know ourselves to value, and where we see ourselves going. And so then we are in a slog. We're exhausting our nervous systems. We're draining our mental bandwidth, trying to fit a square peg through a round hole. And I see it all the time, and I've done it myself. And again, I want anyone who's listening who might be in this to just get radically honest with yourself. Don't put your stank on it. Don't shame yourself about it, but just get radically honest with yourself. Sometimes within our industries, whatever the industry is, whether it's entertainment or it's personal, professional development, or it's something else, we see people within that industry at the top level doing X thing. And we think, well, I should do X thing. But for some reason, we can't get ourselves to do X thing. And so the question is it that you just got to work that attitudinal muscle, that grit muscle, that do it when nobody's watching muscle, A? Or B, is it that you don't genuinely feel congruent with that thing? Do you not genuinely feel in alignment with the character that goes with that thing? And if that's the case, then allow yourself the permission to let it go. Allow yourself the permission to say, oh, I think that's just actually not my jam. I think that's just actually not who I know myself to be or want myself to be. And I'm beating myself up and I'm stalling out and I'm half in and I'm half out because I don't want to just admit like, oh, this just might not be for me, right? It might not be a culture fit. It might not be a character fit, right? Because then when we do that, think about how much bandwidth that opens up, how much energy that then gives us to then find the thing that is in alignment with us, that is more of our truth, that is a better culture fit, that is more of our character, our value system, our goals, right? And then again, that momentum will come back. So again, it's checking in with like, have I outgrown this thing? Am I really seeing myself in this capacity 3 years from now, 5 years from now? Yeah.
I was going to say, doesn't that have to be with some level of like, not guessing, but just to talk about your point, when you landed in LA, your perception was like, look, I'm going to be a great person. I have like this great energy. Things are going to work out. And then you realize they didn't, right? So like, I never guessed we'd be where we are at 420 episodes in, but I also didn't understand it was going to make this level of man of me. That wasn't, well, it kind of was though, in a weird way. Our goal is to be the best men. Not the best podcaster, not the best speaker, the best coach. I want to be the best man. So how do you know if what you actually want is going to create the person and the values and the character that you want?
Such a good question.
Especially, let me spring it all the way back. Especially if the people that you think have that result aren't real. They're faking it.
Yeah.
And you
and
never
then
know.
You meet them and find out that it's not.
You're a
not real.
podcaster. We talked for 15 minutes before this. What did I get from you? You are very energetic, very loving, very free. We've gotten on here with people that is like, oh, you are not the person that we thought you were. Like, this is not going to go right. So how do you know? Long question short. How do you know?
So many good things in rabbit holes that we could go down. Okay, let me try to synthesize all the goodness. Number one, can we just thank you for wanting to be good men and that we need good men right now? So thank you for that that's your primary intention.
Thank you for accomplishing that. Thank you so much.
That's no small thing.
And we agree, by the way. Yes. Desperately need egoless masculine energies, you know, like the
Yeah.
ego is just,
Yeah.
so it's hurting people.
It
It's
is.
hurting people. So
Yeah. The second thing that I would say, I think you were saying, well, how do you know? How do you know? I don't think you know until you get into action.
Mm.
I think a lot of us, myself included, anything I ever say is always myself included. We can just put that in parentheses, right? You, me, and we can get ready to get ready, as Preston Smiles, I think, says, forever. We can intellectualize and plan and vision and think that we are going to just get ready for forever, and think, oh, but when I have X, then I'm going to feel Y forever, until you are actually doing the thing and doing the thing over and over and over and over. You don't know how the thing feels. You don't know how the environment feels. You don't know how the engagement feels. You don't know how the energy feels, right? So the first thing is you don't know until you're actually doing the thing and you're getting feedback. And feedback's a beautiful, beautiful gift. Negative and positive feedback, it is always a gift. It doesn't always feel like a gift, but it is always a gift. And the third thing, what was the third thing? I feel like I had one other really good point. What was the other thing? What was the other thing? Oh, no, it did. How do you reconcile, I think, is kind of what the question was. When you do meet these people and they're not who you thought that they were. And I love that volley. And I'll say a couple of things. I've had a very strange life path in a lot of ways. It's been very layered and very textured, and I'm very grateful for it. And I've known a lot of highs and a lot of lows. For whatever reason, from the time I was 14, because my brother was in the music industry, I have been around in very close proximity to a lot of A-listers in the music industry. And then as an actor on set, in the makeup trailer, in personal dynamics, red carpets. And then even as a photographer and a filmmaker working with like world-class A-listers, right? And when you are in close proximity with those people from the time you're 14, you see them as people. You see their humanity. And I always have felt like, man, what a gift that I don't get wooed very easily. I don't get starstruck. And also, it's a reminder to all of us, it doesn't necessarily have to be that we judge them as being fake, or we think of them as having this like front or facade. It's maybe more of an invitation to remember, oh, right, we're all just doing the best we can. And we're all human, and we're all complicated beings. And to not fall into the trap of putting people on pedestals and then sinking them in the gutter, right? But to recognize they're as neurotic, they're as scared, they're as traumatized, they're as narcissistic as any of us can be, right? And maybe at times we wish that we saw the fuller breadth of them and a little bit more transparency. And also think about you in your own life. There are levels and circles of intimacy. I talk about this a lot. Not everyone is owed every aspect of your story. And that doesn't make you inauthentic, right? There's levels and degrees to which we want to be transparent, and people earn the right to that story based on the trust and the respect and the rapport that you have with them. So I am very, very lucky and very, very humbled and very, very grateful to have a dear core tribe of deep, deep friends who have been through me through hell. They know the good, the bad, and the ugly. They know like the mess, right? In a way that is different than how maybe an audience member who comes to a live event is gonna know me. That doesn't make one part of me any more real or any less real. It's who do you have in your inner circle that way? And similarly, then there's the circle of mentors, there's the circle of coaches, right? They know parts of you, therapists, to a different degree than some others that might be an acquaintance or a colleague or that kind of thing.
So what was it like for you being around all these A-listers since you were 14 to be starstruck for the first time
But Jeff,
on the Hyperconscious podcast?
You're adorable. I was very starstruck. It's true.
Thought a real question was coming. You
I'm
were
so
ready.
cute.
I knew.
You knew.
Yeah, Alan makes a face when he's going to tell us.
Cute.
Oh,
I should also just clarify. It's not like I was living some like fast
Yeah, right.
slick life. I'm a small town New Hampshire girl. It just so happened that I did also have this bizarre other experience, right? But I also grew up, the youngest of 3 in a tiny, tiny town where it was, going to bonfires in your backyard. And
What part of New Hampshire was it?
Amherst, you know Amherst?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
bonfires in your backyard.
Was that your
A little
question?
Pabst Blue Ribbon. No, I have I have a real question,
Damn it.
if you don't mind.
No, you're good.
So there's this great quote of "We shall not cease from exploration, and at the end of all of our exploring will be to return back to where we started and to know the place for the first time." T.S. Eliot. And I think that's so powerful because I go and chase all these big goals and ambitions, and at the end of the day, it just ends up me understanding myself and my past and where I grew up at a deeper level. And that's what this podcast has been for us too. Like 421 episodes in, or 420, it's like we just keep learning more and more about ourselves, about our past, about our present, and about our future.
We've gotten way more than the listeners
Right.
because this is our life. We're always talking about, that's probably why I overreacted because I was treated that way as a kid. It's like, yeah. So if you're listening, we get a lot too.
So my
I love that.
brother. My question for you is, okay, 10,000 people, small town, New Hampshire, bonfire in your backyard. That's where Kevin and I grew up too. Small suburban town, Massachusetts, New England, all the seasons, right?
I love
Big
it.
city, LA, A-list. Like you've lived the full spectrum, right? I mean, for the most part.
Yeah.
And it's like, what have you learned about yourself that you wouldn't have learned had you not achieved those things that you thought would have been the answer? And yeah, I did air quotes for those of you not watching.
Oh, so many lessons, so little time.
Yeah.
What have I learned? Well, I will tell you this. I have known what it feels like to be in the belly of the beast of betrayal, of rejection, of massive disappointment, of having endured false friends and false starts. And I've also known the experience of the buoyancy of when it works and something sings and you get to be a part of something incredible and otherworldly, and that has you in a season of the highest highs, right? And I've known the experience of being broker than broke, and I know the experience of having sold my house and having a big chunk of cash, and I didn't feel any different with the big chunk of cash or being broker than broke. And so that's a lesson, right? Again, going back to those like, well, when I have this, then I'll feel that. The way that we, and I'm sure you all talk about this as coaches, this is sort of the foundational principle, our thoughts create our feelings, which create sensations in our body, which then put us in a certain state physiologically that cause us to take actions or not take actions. Those become habits. Then those habits loop back into our identity and our beliefs, which then perpetuate the same thoughts the next day, right? We have 90,000 thoughts or something a day, and we tend to have like 90% are the exact same as the day before.
Right.
So I know the experience of having been just down for the count and not thinking, I don't know how I'm going to get back up from this. And then I know the experience of that pull when you start to see the light again, and you start to gather your strength again, and you start to remember who you are again. And you start to stack the evidence of like, oh, wait, I have experienced this before. This is not my first rodeo. Oh, wait, I have built other dreams before. I have taken ideas and turned them into real world realities before. This is just one more round. Right? So I've known both of those experiences. And I think when I think back to first, starting in LA and thinking I'm going to be an actress, and then that happening, and it happened so quickly, but then I didn't really know anything about the business. I didn't know anything really about, like, even when I think how I left and I transitioned to getting behind the camera because my friend had passed and it felt so incongruent and it wasn't my character. Not that that should not have happened. It needed to happen, and I'm grateful that it happened. But one of the things that I learned is now, cut to 20 years later, I would have done it differently. I would have still kept relationships and contacts nurtured. I didn't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I didn't have to like blow up that part of my identity or that part of my life. And that's something that now I think as you get older, you recognize, oh, there are different chapters in one's story. And so you don't have to long for the last chapter and stay stuck in the last chapter. You can turn the page, but you can turn the page gracefully and leaving others with their dignity and being kind and thoughtful, because you never know where that story arc will go. 3 chapters, 4 chapters, 5 chapters, into the book. And you might want to harken back to that earlier character or that earlier storyline. So that's something that I've definitely learned, and I think, again, this idea of when people feel like, oh man, I've outgrown, there's ways to start over and end better and truer and still be mindful, still be thoughtful about it, right? I think that's something I've learned for sure.
This is unreal. This is
Right.
fire.
We got 6 minutes. So this is going to be a challenge as much as it is a question.
All right.
I want to make sure you get time to plug at the end. So 3-part question, hammer them quick.
All right.
What chapter of life are you in right now? What chapter of life are you coming out of? And what chapter of life is next for you?
Ooh, this is so good. I should have prepared.
I want the listeners to think of theirs as well.
Same, yes.
Okay. Chapter of life I'm in right now: enthusiasm, joy, amidst massive, 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 massive uncertainty and chaos and crisis and a very dark, draconian world in a lot of ways. I am still committed to enthusiasm and joy. And I think almost because of it, I realize how much reverence I have for life, for love, for lingering on, for people. And so I'm not willing to give up joy. So that, I would say, is now.
Okay.
What was that? So then the season before?
Yes.
2019 kicked my ass. I've been really transparent about it. Kicked my ass. My personal life transitioned in a major, major way. And ironically, now it's been about 15 months as the time of this recording. What the world has been collectively talking about, this shared grief, this shared uncertainty, this shared trauma, this shared sense of having the rug pulled out from under them, is where I was personally. And so I actually feel really grateful that I waded through that for like 10 months, right before COVID hit. And so when COVID hit, interestingly enough, I had leaned so heavily into my grief. I didn't easy button my way out of it. And for that, I'm really grateful. I didn't date out of it. I didn't drink out of it. I didn't work or exercise or shop out of it. I mean, I just like swan dived into the grief so that I could learn the lessons and own it. And then because of that, the alchemy and the catharsis was very clean. And so what's interesting is right as COVID hit, I was coming out of that. And so I think that gives me a unique, I hope, perspective and capacity to holding space for those who are now walking what I had been walking privately. And what was the next one?
What is the next chapter?
The next chapter. Man, I'm just psyched to feel so much creative energy and creative projects because I owned my outgrown and I made some tough decisions and I pivoted again. And because of that, I'm more in alignment, I'm more congruent. I feel like I'm owning my courage and my confidence and my clarity, all the things that you're talking about. And so I am writing and producing a song. I'm working on 3 book proposals simultaneously. And it just feels like there's a lot of synergy and a lot of momentum, and that feels great.
Awesome. This was a very beautiful episode.
Yeah, it really
Very,
was.
very energetically beautiful episode.
Really was. Can I ask one
You can ask
super
a quick
fast.
question. We got 3 minutes on the clock.
3 minutes.
That wasn't quick, by the way. There was no rapid fire happening there.
That was good. That was good for 3.
Yeah, you. This has been tremendous. I do have one question I want to ask you, and I just felt it. I felt compelled. So all of us, anyone listening, Kevin, myself, you, we have this person in our life who we love. And it can be a family member, it can be an intimate partner, it can be a friend. And we've never really been able to, maybe there's something, maybe we want them to take their health more seriously. Maybe we want them to chase their dreams. Maybe we want them to stop being suppressed by that other person. Maybe we want them to have courage and go take that opportunity that they've been sitting on the fence for so long. If you could talk to this person that is in your mind right now, and it would actually click, the lesson would really click. And again, to give context, imagine you talk to your 19-year-old self. It's like that wouldn't have, I remember you saying like, there's naysayers at every corner. Don't buy what they're selling. Fire. But like, would you have really listened had you said that turn of phrase, right? If it would really click and you could be truthful but kind, not brutally honest, but honest, what would you say to this person?
I would say the thing that I am having the most ownership around, and at times feeling the most tender around, and also feeling the most convicted around for passing the baton to others, because I know I'm not alone, is I traded becoming for belonging. And that is a trade not worth making. And you can have both. You can find people and places and projects where you belong, and you can become all that you are craving and desiring to be, right? And the bridge to having both is this trifecta, this framework that I've been talking about. But I built it for myself, which is energy and engagement and environment. And I think I didn't know that I could have both. And I wouldn't want that for myself in the future. I wouldn't want that for my loved ones. And again, we have to take radical ownership, right? We only know what we know when we know it. And that is something for myself, for people who I love and miss, that you can have both. You can belong and you can become in the right environment with the right engagement and with the right energy, and that everybody participates in that.
It's been so good.
We're going to have to reschedule this for like, I think we should do a longer one next time. Genuinely.
I would love
We
to.
don't usually do longer ones, but I feel like it flows. You know what I mean? I have 7 questions on the board. I didn't ask a single one of them. Like we just went, and that's beautiful. I absolutely love it. But there's so many things that we could go off on. So I genuinely believe that's what my intuition is telling me. Now,
I'm a chatty Cathy. It's true.
No, it's beautiful. You're a beautiful storyteller. If somebody's intuition, hypothetically speaking, somebody's intuition right now is saying, I'd love to work with Karen. Where can I do that? Where would they find you? Where would they find you?
I love this. So if we had done this even 5 days ago, I would have said, hey, go find me everywhere at Dreamcatchers District, which is the podcast, and all of the social media handles were that. And right now I'm actually amidst a pivot. So the social media handles are all going to be changing. I think right now, while you're even listening, do this for me. Do me a favor. Go to Instagram and type in "call me KJ," because my nearest and dearest friends, family, and now clients and audience are going to be calling me KJ, because that's that's how I've been known my whole life, right? So that feels truer for me. And if you go to Call Me KJ, I think I should pop up. Did you see me when you entered it?
Right up, but I was already following you, so that might be a
Okay, so my actual handle
optimization when I'm already following you.
Okay, my actual handle I think is KJ _ Christensen, CHRISTENSEN.
And I will confirm that is your Instagram handle.
That is okay. I literally did this like 12 minutes ago. So I don't even remember.
Timing.
But come find me and direct message me. And if anything resonated from this episode, particularly if you feel like you're in a season where, because of character, because of alignment, because of congruence, you're feeling like, man, I have outgrown my relationship. I've outgrown my money story. I've outgrown my body story. I've outgrown my brand. My brand doesn't even feel like me. My business doesn't even feel like me. Or if you feel just like the world being where it's at has ripped the rug out from under you, direct message me there at my outgrown, and I will reach out to you and we'll have a conversation, and we'll make sure to get you invited to some virtual events and some coachings, and I'll send some resources your way.
We will link all that in the show notes so people can easily do it in case they can't find the Instagram. They should be good though, but we'll link.
I would love to do this again. So let's do it. I'll come.
We will.
Do whatever.
Yeah, we got to do it again because there's just so much flow going on. If you could leave the listeners with 10 second blip on something impactful that maybe would have changed or will change their life, like your brother asking you what you would do, what would that term, that question, that statement be?
This one's a real tricky one.
It's our job.
I said it in that episode. So synchronistic. Life is so funny. I said it in that episode that you mentioned, the 5 things I would tell my 19-year-old self. Mm-hmm. Number 5 was forgive everyone, everything. And it was easy to say that when I recorded it. It's been harder to say that this past year. And for anyone who might be walking that path of needing to find forgiveness for themselves, needing to find forgiveness for others, needing to find some semblance of grace, even within this world as we see it. That's the challenge to all of us. That at the end of the day, when your head hits the pillow, can you go to bed feeling proud? And can you go to bed feeling at peace?
This was more synchronistic than I can possibly describe with some of the things that you've said. My goodness. Also, your vocabulary is fire.
Very, very
you
good
say
one.
Really catharsis. All this, I'm like, yes, I love it. I need it. Want it. Okay,
I took
cool.
a list of words down that I will research.
Yeah,
after, so I know them, and I'll know what you were talking about tomorrow.
That's so cute.
We appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for your time, your energy, your intention, all of that. We will definitely do something longer for sure. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.
I hope you do too. And I think after we hang up, I'm going to just say how much I appreciate you.
Likewise. Alan and I will be talking about this after because we always do like a match.
A little debrief.
So yeah. So
all right.
Thank you so much, Karen. We appreciate you.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for everyone listening. Talk soon.